I call to order the Town of Saybrook Zoning Commission regular hybrid meeting of Monday, October 3rd, 2022 at 7 p.m. in Town Hall, first floor conference room at 302 Main Street. Seated tonight, it's me, Bob Friedman, Chair, Mark Calderola, Vice Chair, Jerry Lewis, Secretary, regular Commission member Mark Delmonico, and the alternates tonight, Sandy DeCenzo is seated for Anne Marie Thorson, also present alternate Justin Terabili, and our attorney Matt Willis, and our clerk Joanne Galley, and 16 people here in the audience and 11 online.
Eight.
Oh, okay. And regular business is minutes of our previous meeting, that being Wednesday, September 7th. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes?
No.
Not appearing.
Very nice.
I found everything's
Find something?
fine.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of Wednesday, September 7th, 2022 as presented.
Second.
Seconded by Jerry Lewis. Any discussion on the motion to approve? All those in favor of approving the September 7th minutes as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Sandy? Oh, okay, yes, motion carries unanimously. None opposed, no abstentions. Next up on the agenda is new business. Assuming we have no correspondence, Joanne, right, great. New business, Saybrook Point Marina LLC, minor modification to special exception, last modified on May 2nd, 2022, to retain the handicap bedroom, room number 101, and not convert it to service area for the adjacent covered patio. This is at 2 Bridge Street, map 24, lot 45, Saybrook Point 2 District, Gateway Zone, Coastal Area Management Zone, applicant Saybrook Point Marina LLC, agent Attorney Royston. Mr. Royston.
This is a relatively simple change, since it merely dealt with the statement of use in which the applicant, Saybrook Point Marina, in connection with the construction of a second-story addition in which they were going to convert a suite into 2 bedrooms, extending the wall approximately 5 feet out towards the parking lot. And they indicated in their application that there was no change in the number of required parking spaces because it was just simply a swap of 2 bedrooms for one bedroom was going to be eliminated, and there would be a suite converted from a suite to 2 bedrooms. After they went through that, and they went through a number of other plans, Steve Tagliatella realized that this created a problem because bedroom 101 was a first floor handicap bedroom with all the wide doors, bathroom, etc. And it would be a problem if you lost that bedroom. So the request is to simply remove the requirement that the first floor bedroom 101 be switched into adjacent space where the patio is, and it's a covered patio, and there's just a door. That door isn't used for access, and that is the only change. The parking provided is still conforming with one additional space. That's it.
The number of bedrooms, number of rooms on the second floor was previously modified to add 1.
To add 1 bedroom on the first, to convert a
On the-
large
on the-
suite,
on the-
which is actually only 1 bedroom.
1.
Correct. To 2 bedrooms.
And then that 1 went to 2, and On the upper floor,
Correct.
and so that was dependent or related to the elimination of the handicap on the first one.
Correct. It was related because definitely that Steve's plan was we'll convert that to adjacent space because it wasn't occupied very often. But then he realized it was a
So,
handicap bedroom that he needed.
and accompanying the handicap on the first floor, there were other rooms on the first floor that were removed.
Yes, they have already been converted to the lobby bar. I forgot the name of it, but
So how many rooms was that?
that was, there was no additional rooms created. Those two rooms were eliminated.
Right, and those two rooms essentially moved upstairs.
They became the two-bedroom suite.
Okay. So there's no net change in the number of rentable accommodations, is there?
One. Not from what was before the modification, but after the modification, there is one bedroom, which is one more bedroom, which is being retained.
But that's part of the suite.
No,
No.
that's downstairs,
So that,
101.
right, okay,
Yeah.
101.
Instead of being eliminated,
Right. So
that's,
the question remains, based on local knowledge of the situation at Saybrook Point in the marina and the town park at the, which encompasses the pavilion and the mini golf area, that my observation as a resident and visitor to the place is that there's inadequate parking for Saybrook Point Inn and Marina. I have seen workers park their car on town property and or the next property north. And with their uniforms on, they walk into the Saybrook Point building to go to work. I can tell by cars that are parked there that there are guests that are staying at the hotel part and where I've seen people walk to go to the restaurant called Fresh Salt. There is not sufficient parking on the Saybrook Point Inn and Marina parking lot. And so you claim in this application that your parking is 247 spaces, that's below the 250 spaces now provided. That doesn't jive with local experience, that there's not sufficient parking there. And that at some point, this is gotta be issued, again, this issue has to be handled. Because the town has resorted to putting up illegal A-frame signs announcing that the parking at the pavilion parking lot it does not allow for overnight parking. So that the condition has been recognized by others. And at this point, if all you're doing is shuffling the rooms around from one floor to the other and back again, then there's no net change in what was previously required on paper. But the commission is aware that there's insufficient parking at Saybrook Point in the marina. And that any future applications should address that somehow.
I understand. The only thing I can report to you is that that issue was raised at the time of the original application. And I think the situation probably is better from any sort of enforcement point of view. Obviously, the owner is unable to control where people park, and some people, even though there's spaces available, park across the street because it's more convenient.
Granted, but at some
that has
point,
occurred.
using the town property to support Saybrook Point Inn and Marina is not an advisable path to take. And it seems to me that at some point there might be steps to control the parking on the town property so that there would be essentially no overnight parking whatsoever.
That's what I think is going to occur, because there's plans which you're going to hear for about development of property. We're calling it on the other side, on the pavilion side of the street. which is going to negate the ability to park over there. And certainly there are enforcement rights on behalf of the town for parking. Right, so,
Well, it's the Parks and Recreation Department that put up the sign.
Yes,
It's for parking, so-
Because,
right.
yeah, so,
Right, because mini golf, parking became.
Well, and use of the pavilion as well,
Yeah.
so, but that really isn't
Yeah,
the issue here.
Well, the issue that they claim to provide 247
Well-
parking spaces, still below the
I think-
250 now.
Not counting-
obviously.
not counting
I
the-
think
That's a,
the ones across the street.
I think part of the problem is that the hotel does not do anything to encourage parking on the bigger part of their lot. They just let people park wherever they park
It's more convenient.
Without-
Yeah,
forcing them to move.
yes, but there are times when there are no parking spaces available at the Saybrook Point Inn or Marina parking, such as an evening event.
Sure.
And that's when the pavilion and or mini golf find that there's no parking for their patrons because of the overflow onto the town-owned parking. So I'm alerting the applicant to the fact that we are well aware that there is insufficient parking, even if there's 250 spaces provided. All right, so with regard to this particular application, there's, we don't have a tool by which to increase the parking requirement overall, since this application doesn't increase
Right.
parking
any
requirements.
parking, yeah,
Right, it doesn't apply to this. Anything in the future would need to address that.
Yes,
For this point of
Right
business
now.
this evening,
correct.
it doesn't apply.
Right.
right.
All right, so any questions or comments on this application to modify the previously approved special exception? No.
No,
No,
Do we have referrals on this at all? We have,
do we?
I don't see any in
I didn't see
my,
any.
did we,
I don't
we didn't,
think so.
we didn't get any outside comments or referrals?
No, not on this
From
one.
anyone? All right.
No,
There was a
no,
minor modification which came to the commission on that,
Right.
on that basis.
yeah,
Okay. All right. Any further questions?
no,
No.
Are we prepared to deliberate? on
Yes.
that? All right,
yes, we are.
all right. Make a motion to approve the Saybrook Point Marina LLC minor modification to special exception, previously modified on May 2nd, 2022, to retain the handicap room number 101 on the first floor and to not convert it to a service area for the adjacent covered patio.
Second,
Seconded by Jerry Lewis. Any discussion on the motion to approve the modification? All in favor of approving the modification at Saybrook Point Marina LLC, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. I will notify the owner of the comments made by the chair prior to the applicant. Thank you.
thank you.
Next up on the agenda is CGCT Old Saybrook LLC preliminary discussion at 1654 Boston Post Road, Assessors Map 26, Lot 39 in the P4 District, pedestrian zone. And properties at 6, 8, 10, and 18 Denmore Lane, Assessors Map 26, Lot 36, Assessors Map 18, Lot 7, 7-1, and 13. Property owner CGCT, Old Saybrook LLC, agent attorney Edward Casella. Mr. Casella.
Hi, good evening, Ed Casella, representing CGCT LLC, property owner of 1654 Boston Post Road. Dave Taglianetti from the Carpinato Group, which is the owner of CGCT, is here with me today, along with Jeff Fitzgerald from Bowler Engineering. This is a preliminary discussion regarding the former Benny site. Note for the agenda, the only property that we're talking about for development at this point in time is 1654 Boston Post Road. The Denmore parcels are no longer a part of the development plan, still owned by the entity. But when we're going to show you the concept plan that we sent around, there's no proposed commercial development for those parcels.
All right, the one that I received earlier on did entail use of the residential,
No, it does not.
but the latest proposal, concept plan does not.
Does not. Correct. Yeah, the one we sent today does not either.
Oh, I didn't get today's.
Yeah, that's the latest. There was discussion over the summer regarding the Denmore parcels, but those are off the table. And I heard you read it on the agenda, so I just wanted to confirm that in advance.
Okay.
But I'm going to turn it over to Dave Taglianetti just to give you an overview, and I can put up on the screen here the latest concept plan that we have. So thank you. There we go.
Good evening, folks. As Ed mentioned, my name is Dave Taglianetti with the Campionato Group. First of all, thank you for your time tonight. I appreciate it. Just wanted a few minutes of your time to give you an update on our redevelopment project for the former Benny's. We were before you all back in November, December of last year with this project. We were seeking a text amendment for 2 drive-throughs for 2 out parcels that we were considering at the time. Since then, we signed a lease with Whole Foods. I was hoping to come and share that news with you tonight, but good news travels fast, and I'm well aware that you all know about the Whole Foods. So we're very excited. You know, they say good things come to those who wait, and we've waited on this project for a long time. We knew we had a great piece of real estate here. We developed 15 of the other 30 Benny's sites with tenants, good tenants, but not tenants like Whole Foods. So we waited, and we have a tenant that we are really happy with. We hope you're all happy with it as well. What comes with signing a tenant like Whole Foods, they're very demanding. And they have a very demanding parking requirement. So as Ed mentioned, over the summer, we considered trying to maintain the out parcels, or at least one of the out parcels. And the only way to do that was to get additional parking on the Denmore residential lots in order to meet the parking demand that Whole Foods wants as part of their lease. And quite honestly, I actually met with some of the neighbors along Denmore Lane. They were not thrilled with the prospect of having parking next to them, and we completely understood. So we abandoned that piece of the project. Honestly, I wasn't even aware that the community had seen those plans. It was really just internal discussions. We met with the neighbors. They went through with it. We're very happy with the project that we have here, a 40,000 square foot Whole Foods, and another 30 to 31,000 square feet of retail and restaurant space. So in addition to the Whole Foods, we have 2 existing tenants that we're going to relocate within the plaza. We have Alforno's Restaurant, and we also have Napa Auto Parts. So based on the end configuration of the interior layout of the building, we have Whole Foods, that footprint is set. And then we have, let's see if I can get this working. We have this 30,000 square feet here of space. So we're negotiating letters of intent with several other tenants for that 30,000 square feet that will go with Napa and with Alforno's. So depending on how the rest of that interior space lays out, will ultimately determine where Napa goes within that existing space and where Alforno's goes. Most likely Alforno's is going to go on the end cap of that, it says 7,500 square feet. Of that 7,500 square feet, 3,000 to 3,500 will be relocated Alforno's in that space. So the out parcels are gone. This is now the development. In addition to the Whole Foods, we are looking to upgrade the facade of the building. So we'll have a brand new front elevation for the building. We'll also be looking to upgrade the entire site. We'll have new pavement. We'll have new landscaping. As a matter of fact, we did a quick calculation on the landscaping. Existing landscaping, interior landscaping totals about 5,000 square feet for the site today. Our proposed landscaping totals just over 15,000 square feet. So 3 times as much interior landscaping as what's at the site today. So it's going to help break up the parking field. We'll also be doing stormwater management improvements, so increasing or improving water quality on the site. And right now, the site basically collects via a closed system and discharges to the wetlands behind the site with little to no water quality treatment prior to discharging to the wetlands. And then lastly, we're going to be looking to make upgrades to the on-site septic system as well, bring that up to code. So with that, again, just a brief overview, an update on where we're at. From a scheduling standpoint, we have Bowler Engineering on board, Jeff Fitzgerald. As long as everything goes well tonight, we're looking to get Bowler starting on our site civil design drawings. And we hope to make application to the town, maybe sometime end of November, beginning of December. The only other issue, I don't know if you're going to bring it up, is we're hoping to come before you with a plan that is zoning compliant, with the exception of one issue, and that is there's a 25-foot. For some reason, my battery is out, but this is not working very well. There's a 25-foot front yard landscape buffer along Old Post Road. The site currently does not meet that buffer, and we have an existing conditions plan to show you. Show it here. So right now, there's little to no buffer at the front. As a matter of fact, some of the end parking spaces are actually over within the right of way. So our proposed plan is to add to that buffer. I want to say anywhere from 10 to 15 feet of additional landscape buffer at that front yard. We just don't meet the 25-foot front yard setback. And the reason we don't meet it is because of the parking demand for Whole Foods. Whole Foods needs 240 spaces. Their parking count is 6 spaces for every 1,000 square feet of footprint for their building. So they have 40,000 square feet, 6 per 1,000 is 240 spaces. The only way we can get them to sign the lease is to promise them 240 spaces in this front lot. The only way for us to meet that is to eat into that 25-foot buffer setback, but understanding it's a better setback that we're proposing than what exists today. So I think that's the only
And there is a provision.
non-compliant issue.
There is a provision in the regulations, 10.7.6, which is in the non-conformity section, that actually allows, in situations like this where you have existing non-conformities, and this is all verified by survey. GIS is frankly really close to the survey that we have. The parking is in the front, right up to the line, and in fact encroaches over several feet at the corner closest to the light. But 10.7.6 does allow the commission on a special exception, which will be before you anyway, to allow for non-conformities to remain or be reduced, which is what we'd be asking for in this application, is understanding there's a 25-foot front landscaped area, and we're going to give you as much of it as we can, but in some instances not meet it fully, but reducing the non-conformity from what it is today.
Compared to the existing conditions, how much larger is the proposed building?
We're adding the existing building totals approximately 58,000 square feet.
In the upper right corner inside the building, it shows that there is an added
Correct.
square footage.
Correct.
All right, so if the building were not expanded, then there would be additional space on the lot to accommodate the parking regulations and perhaps provide the full 25. It's because the building is expanding to accommodate a shape for what's shown as a supermarket. If
Correct.
the building were expanded to provide that shape and reduced on the left side where it's retail and subdividable retail and subdividable restaurant, then everything could be in compliance. It's the fact that the building is proposed to be expanded that that provokes the need to keep the non-conformity.
But to improve on it. You're right, you're absolutely correct.
Right, so it's by choice that the non-conformity would be a request to be continued or reduced. All right, so that's one non-conformity with regard to the 25-foot front landscaped area. The proposed, can you move it so we can see Route 1 a little bit there? There's oh, good, there's more trees showed on this one than I've seen before. Okay. The perimeter buffer, landscape buffer around the property is provided. That's a reduction in the non-conformity. The other concerns I have is that we have regulation in the parking section 62 that specifies that there not be more than 15 spaces in a row without an intervening landscape island. The line across on the Route 1 side is one of those. There's another on the right edge near the entrance drive. There's one along the right side. There's certainly one behind the building. There's one on the left side of the parking area. So there's multiple locations where the regulations are not, that there's a lack of compliance with the regulations regarding that one. We furthermore have a regulation in the parking landscape section. Parking is 60. Parking is 62 in the landscaping section 63. There's a requirement regarding the square footage of interior parking lot landscaping, and you've addressed that you're proposing an increase in that interior parking lot landscaping. That would be another non-conformity that would have to be looked at. And in particular, we have a regulation that says there should not be more than 4 aisles in a row without an intervening landscape island. And if you look going from left to right in the front of the store area, there's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 rows in a row without an intervening landscape island. A landscape island has a minimum dimension of 10 feet. The sidewalks that are shown there are not 10 feet. So even if a sidewalk is permitted in an interior landscaped area, it doesn't meet that requirement. That would be another regulation regarding landscaping that would have to be discussed as a non-conformity. And in this case, with all that greenery left over there on the right side of the entrance drive, it seems that some of that could be used for the entrance drive on a slightly different configuration. And the green areas could become interior parking lot landscaping to reduce the impact of the sea of asphalt that's been there for so long. The parking calculation as you specified for one potential tenant at the supermarket gives a number of parking spaces. For this, what you've shown here, there are 3 businesses in the building. That's less than 4, and once we get to 4, it would become a shopping center, which would have a lesser parking requirement, 225 spaces per 225 square feet per parking space would be the requirement if there was a 4th occupant. There are 2 parts there shown as subdividable. If either one of them were subdivided to include an additional tenant, it would become a shopping center and have a reduced parking requirement, which would alleviate the need for all of the parking spaces that would be attributable to a single retail and a single restaurant. And so again, it's important to know how the square footage of the building would be utilized in order to calculate the parking for the whole site as it functions as a whole site. Knowing what the parking requirement is for one tenant leaves us without any means to determine what the rest of the parking might have to be for the spaces you show as subdivided. So as single tenants, there to be 175 square feet for each parking space required for the retail, and for the restaurant, it would be dependent on the number of seats in the restaurant. And at 5,000 square feet, there's probably a need for, who knows? More than 100 parking spaces. But once it becomes a shopping center, the need for all the square footage goes down to one space for 225 square feet. And you might be able to get by with a lot less parking, more landscaped in the parking to meet the requirements of the regulations.
Yeah, a couple of points to note. Your comment regarding the access drive is a good one. So we looked at many different iterations, alternatives of that access drive. Where it connects into Boston Post Road is set because of the traffic signal. There's also a wetland on the right-hand side of that access drive that limits our ability to shift the driveway over to the right, because that's what we wanted to do. So we did consider that. At the end of the day, this will be considered a shopping center. We will have probably 5, 6 tenants easily at the end of the day. So it will be a shopping center, and it will be subject to the 225 parking spaces for 1,000 square feet, which I understand will be less. But what we have to balance is that we have a lease with Whole Foods. And in order to get Whole Foods to this property, they require a certain parking demand for their store and the balance of the other stores.
Well, it appears that they require a certain shape to the building as well.
It's a standard footprint that they have. Like I said, there's a good things that come with having Whole Foods as a tenant. And there's this, if you can Google this, this is true. There's the Whole Foods effect on real estate values when Whole Foods moves into a neighborhood, and real estate values will go up when Whole Foods moves into a certain neighborhood. So there is some good, but they are a demanding tenant. You know, we have them in several of our shopping centers. And I can tell you, they will not budge. They want 6 parking spaces per 1,000 for their store and five spaces per 1,000 for the balance. So that's what we have. So your regulations it's 225,000. For Whole Foods, it's 1 space for every 200 square feet. So it's close. Yours is 225. Their requirement will be 1 space for every 200 square feet. So at the end of the day, you know, we're going to come in with a plan that needs to meet the demands of Whole Foods and is going to be as compliant with zoning as we can possibly make it. And then, you know, we'll see. We think what we're proposing today is a big improvement, a vast improvement, what's there today from a landscaping standpoint. Like I said, interior landscaping alone, we're proposing 3 times more than what exists out there today. So I certainly understand that we, you know, as a community, you want every project to meet your requirements. Since this is a redevelopment, we have certain limitations as to what we can do. And not to say you didn't make a good point, because with a larger footprint, you know, we could slide that over, we could do certain things, but we like to just balance. You know, we feel like we're coming to the community with a really nice project, and we're hoping that the town is willing to make some minor concessions on landscaping requirements. We're going to meet them to the best extent we can, understanding that, you know, we want to have a project at the end of the day that's successful for you and is successful for us.
The town has recently used grant money to provide for sidewalks in the direction of this site and the Westbrook town line.
Right.
And I don't see any sidewalks proposed there.
It's on there.
We do. We're going to save
Yeah.
you some of your grant money, because we're going to be adding sidewalks.
So there would be sidewalks along the frontage with Route
Yeah.
1. Yeah,
Yes,
that's a good,
Yeah, you can see, they're hard to see, but they're on the,
just have to blow it up a little bit. But
Yeah.
they're there.
and as for.
Yeah.
Yes,
Right along the
Yeah,
right of
okay.
way line.
yeah, that requires an encroachment permit with the state because it's on Route 1.
Which we have to apply for.
Yes,
Perimeter landscape buffing is a future topic because we have regulations regarding those requirements for what's planted in the perimeter. That would be especially sensitive along the, what's that? Eastern property line, the house is on Denmore Lane.
Yes.
Would be,
Yeah, there's a larger landscape buffer, 20 foot for the residential zone, and there's a 50 foot setback.
I'm talking about the actual plantings of vegetation in the perimeter buffer on that side. That would be an item for discussion. The drainage on this site is notoriously a problem, as you mentioned, and parts of the parking lot have depressions in them as well, and there are puddles from visiting it in a rainy situation. So we certainly have our engineers look into fixing those problems as well. Those are not issues that the commission can allow to continue as non-conforming or reduction of non-conformity. So
Understood.
anyone else have any questions?
I have one more of a clarifying question because I heard a couple of different things being said. But we're really looking at a larger development in the sense of the number of storefronts, which would then apply to the 225. So based on that knowledge, but not showing the additional storefronts, the only non-conformity that you would be asking for would be the front setback.
No, I think there are others, and I failed to mention them. That's my mistake. On our conference call last week with Ed and with our engineer, they mentioned the requirement about breaking up the parking. I wasn't aware that the interior kind of longitudinal landscaped islands needed to be 10 feet. So that's something that.
And they have to have landscape.
Yeah.
So that's something that I learned tonight. So we're gonna go back.
Okay.
And revisit this layout, the design, and we're gonna try to be as compliant as we can. I just, knowing this site a little bit, having worked on many different concepts, I don't know if we're gonna be able to meet every one of them, but we're gonna try our best.
Well, you're fairly confident that the front setback won't be met in its entirety.
You know what, we're gonna
Yeah, you have
relook
to
at
figure it out.
Just to
everything.
give
The only thing I
you
can promise
feedback.
you,
That's all.
it's gonna be better than what it exists today.
No question about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
And as
it-
far as not showing the other tenants, it's only because we don't know exactly what that configuration is going to
right,
be.
I understand
We
that,
know there'll be multiple tenants in the balance of the space, but we
but it's
just don't know the
beneficial for you to
configuration.
show that because then it changes your parking calculation
Understood.
to the positive.
Yeah.
Well, it does for zoning, but not for Whole Foods. So
Well, no,
that's.
I know that, but
That's-
overall,
That's the overall. We have the opposite problem.
It puts us in our argument, but it is what it is, and we're not gonna try to duck out of that. I represent it, it is gonna be examined as a shopping center. So,
Okay.
thank you.
thanks.
So this is preliminary discussion as mentioned in our regulation, informal discussion of site plans in section 51.3. Let's see. Purpose of the informal discussion is to minimize delay, expense, and inconvenience to all interested parties and to assist the potential applicant in understanding appropriate design parameters desired by the town. Right, so that's where we are. Anyone else have any questions?
No, I think he has his marching orders
Yeah.
now.
I'm gonna march all the way home. In the rain, that looks like.
I know, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Next on the agenda is continued public hearings, the petition to amend the Old Saybrook zoning regulation, section 53, standard for motor vehicles for separation distance for fuel pumping stations or options proposed. The petitioner is Big Y Foods, Inc. and Max's Place LLC, agent Attorney Royce. Mr. Royce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner David Royston, attorney for the co-applicant. After commencement of this public hearing, I provided you some material and as quickly as I was able. At a time when we went over a little. And so at this point, I just have a couple of additional items. And then certainly available to answer questions that you may have on it. I believe that Matt Demore is on the Zoom and is available if needed. And also Ron Lyman indicated that he was going to be here. But we don't need to wait for him. I'd just like to add a couple of items. And that is, I gave you a set of maps which basically went from Westbrook to the river along the Boston Post Road, the pedestrian node portions of it, and also showing the location of the 9 existing gas stations. It had the circle around it to give you an idea of exactly what this might entail. And one of the things which, if you go through that, there's a certain number of properties which are certainly potential to have retail gasoline sales. And so I just wanted to just bring to your attention that in the B2 area, the what I call the Old Saybrook Shopping Center on Elm Street, Boston Post Road. That, if you took a look at the circle on the map, did not cover with 1,000 feet the entire property. It could, in the outer reaches of it, be beyond the 10,000. Also, as you're aware, there's a piece of property, used to be a skateboard along Elm Street in the front, which is part of the shopping center property. That's outside the 1,000 foot radius. And if we're reduced to 500 feet, the available property, particularly towards the back of the shopping center, which is towards the Adelman site, at 500 feet might be available. So I just bring that one to your attention, that when the regulation was changed that fueling stations could be in the B2 and B4, this meant that that use was available to those B2 properties, and those are 2 that could comply. This regulation probably makes, if they were going to do anything, would make the site probably in a more appropriate place on that property. Similarly with, I'll call it the Ocean State Job Lot property, that also in the B2 does have sufficient area and doesn't come within even the existing area of another gas station or fueling station facility. So that is a potential. In the B4, we just saw a plan on the Bennies, and on the lower reaches, it's outside of what we proposes the 500 reduction, but effectively it you take the location of the building on their plan, and it wouldn't be practical for them to try to locate it in a location. I don't think Whole Foods would be interested in that. One of the properties which is eligible now at 1,000 feet, so this regulation doesn't impact it, is the property on 52 Spencer Plain Road. That property, which I think you've seen some preliminary plan for, It's north of the railroad, south of 95, has a down gradient into that property. That's eligible now because it's in the B4. And even under this regulation would not affect it in any way. So just kind of wanted to bring those properties to your attention over on the east side of the B4. There's just a couple of properties. There used to be the Poinkowski property, and I think it's been sold. But that is, as you probably know, mainly a bog, which has prevented its development up to now. You look at that site and say, gee, that's a site ready made for development, but because of the soil characteristics, that bog, you just can't put anything on it. Maybe parking, but certainly not buildings. So that's in the largest B4 property. Some property on the south side, also owned by the same owner, might be potential in the B4. But that really is about it. Second thing I just wanted to bring to your attention is that we made 4 applications. And the reason for making 4 amendments, not probably, but 4 amendments in 1 application was so that there would be the ability to say, okay, one of these is acceptable, or 2 of them are acceptable, and pass them. And so that the commission would have the opportunity to make a choice, rather than us trying to foretell what might be the most acceptable. I have had, however, some conversations during the pendency application with Chris Costa, and unfortunately she is unable to be here. So I don't want to quote her, but one of the topics of was potential restriction to this use in a shopping center. And that was the genesis of one of the amendments, the 3rd amendment, which says in a shopping center, limited to a shopping center where the reduction to 500 feet. Also, the gateway kind of said to you, just do it in the B4 so that we don't have to deal with it, because there's some B2 property in the gateway, a couple of pieces that potentially they might have to deal with. The only B4 piece would not meet the requirements. It's a very small little chunk of property. So one of the thoughts would be to combine these 2 concepts and just do an amendment to the to one of the regulations, which would be acceptable to the applicant, to kind of do a hybrid of the 3rd amendment. And the 3rd amendment says that in a shopping center, in the B2 or B4 district, in a shopping center, a 500-foot radius. And one of the thoughts would be to say simply a shopping center within the B4 district shall have the 500-foot minimum. That is a conservative approach to this regulation. We started out by saying if we thought it was illegal on a preliminary basis, and you might want to just get rid of it at all. But more conservative thoughts was, okay, let's not fight that battle. Let's just keep the restriction, but do it in such a way or ways that it doesn't affect the ability of this particular shopping center to go through its regulatory process. This is just enabling legislation for them to be able to go through for a special exception, go to OSTA, because it does come within their jurisdiction for a major traffic generator, go to DOT also for encroachment permit. So it's got to go through all those, including special exception here. And they have already paid the fee towards ordinance 71 fee to have your traffic engineers take a look at this. So just going to give you this just in case. I personally think that this is probably the best way to go. It's this just restricts it to a shopping center within the B4 just by adding that little bit of language. And if other areas think it appropriate that they get the same, they be able to increase it. You have the opportunity, obviously, to consider it on a case-by-case basis. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have, and in conclusion, simply point out that you have consistently favorable reviews, approvals, or endorsements from your boards and commissions and from the sole public letter that we have received. So that concludes our formal presentation, and thank you very much. Happy to answer the questions or
Any commission members have any questions? Come to our attention that the wording regarding this 1,000-foot separation in our regulations existed as early as October 15th, 1973, in section 53.6.2. At that time, part B was no pump or other fuel filling devices for retail sale of gasoline or other motor vehicle fuel on any lot shall be located within less than 25 feet of any street line or property line, or within a radius of 1,000 feet of any such pump or device on any other lot. If we count 1973, that's 50 years that regulation has been in place. And and you listed nine stations in your map with the yellow circles. There may be yet another one at Charisma down by Springbrook Road. There's a green and white building that was at one point a gas station. It's now car vacuums and not much else. But that would be an attempt. That one no longer pumps gas. Kenny Adelman's station close to Burger King, not pumping gas. Meineke has not pumped gas for decades now. And there used to be a gas station where the Chamber of Commerce building is at the intersection of Main Street and Route 1. There used to be a gas station at the corner of Route 1 and 156 where Dunkin' Donuts is now. Before it was the Soul and Mar Cafe, that was a gas station. And so if you had them all up, there used to be as many as 12 gas stations, and now we're down to 7 functioning. You mentioned 9, but that included Meineke and Kenny Adams.
Right.
So there's from a high of 12, we're down to 7. With regard to the increase in electrified vehicles, what is the need for an increase in the number of properties that could have a motor vehicle fueling station with regard to petroleum product, fossil fuels? with the trend being a reduction in functioning gas stations in our town so far over the course of 50 years. The number there has not previously been a demand for more. Why is there a demand for more fossil fuel filling stations?
I think that was answered by the testimony of Ron Lyman and Matt Demore early on, when they indicated that for shopping centers now, since the started before the pandemic, where people were more vehicular oriented, but the pandemic really made a lot of people for like groceries to go pick them up, make an order and pick them up, that sort of thing. And that also a lot of the order for shopping centers having retail establishment, your classic shopping center, which I think Max's place is, Old Saybrook Shopping Center is, that so many people are ordering online, or you go in and you make your order out of the catalog, but they order it and you bring it and then you pick it up. There's much less shopping in the retail shops themselves. And they have indicated, and you read Matt Demore's letter, which was with the set of maps. It says,
This would be a legislative decision impacting the regulations to allow for the possibilities that you're suggesting to end up with few filling stations, pumps that are closer than 1,000 feet. In particular, you mentioned Big Y, and that's at the intersection of Route 1 and Route 166. And 1,000-foot distance from the pumps from the existing gas station food bag goes into the property where Big Y is located, but it does not include all of the property. There is still space on the property to accommodate a gas station. But it would be preferred by the applicant Big Y involved in this text change proposal to put the gas station closer than 1,000 feet, even though it could be located outside the 1,000 feet.
it can't, as a practical matter, be located outside the 1,000 feet. They acquired this particular piece of property as a planning.
But the 1,000-foot circle does not go all the way to the
I
north
understand that.
to encompass all of the property. So there's space there, but it's previously been developed for other purposes.
Correct.
So the preference is to put it in a place that would require the text change.
Practicalities are that it would require that. And just to finish on, and Matt's letter, he says the importance of the synergy between having gasoline, they fuel, they give stamps, where it keeps people going and shop, not only there, but in the other sectors. So this is the really the overriding reason for it. When you say why do they want to reduce it, it's been something that's been there for 50 years. I'm perfectly aware of that. The old Solomar, they used to say that, gee, you could smell the gasoline when you were there. Not that I was there, but that's what I was told. I'm really fully aware of that. But times have changed. It is a regulation which I think did its part during the period of time when the Boston Brooks Road was developed, because there was a thought, we don't want this to become gasoline alley. That was what was said in 1973. That was the genesis of that regulation. And I think it's accomplished that purpose. This reduction in that, I don't think is going to have any significant negative impact on this desire not to make it gasoline alley. When you take a look at it on that map, most of the stations in existence, and the two that have, as far as I know, reserve the right made to have gasoline again, Adams and Meineke. And you raise Charisma. I don't know that they have reserved the right. I didn't put them on the list for that reason. But they are all center east. If you really take a look at it, the only one which is on the kind of the center of town going west towards Westbrook is at the food bank. So I think that having another gas station at the applicant's property is a good thing, and that's what the Economic Development Commission found. That's what the Planning Commission found, consistent with the plan of development, what they want the zoning regulations to do for the town. It's met those, and I hope that the regulation, any one of those, looked upon favorably by the commission.
Any commissioners have any questions, comments on the hearing? This is a public hearing regarding a text change application of legislative action to be taken by the commission. Is there anyone present in the room wishing to speak in favor of or in opposition to this application? None appearing. Is there anyone online wishing to speak in favor of this application or in opposition to this application? Use the raise your hand feature on your Zoom meeting, please. None appearing. We're up to there's 25. None appearing. All right, then we don't need any. We have input from the EDC that Mr. Royston mentioned, and from the Planning Commission. Do we have any other referrals? Joanne, do you have a list of referrals regarding this? None of. Then I'll make a motion.
I should say, go ahead. There was the Harbor Commission.
Yes.
Okay,
No comment.
yeah, right, no comment on it, and Gateway, as we mentioned.
Great. Okay. Then I'll make I have noted that the applicant has submitted as of 10/3/2022 modification to the third amendment that they proposed among the four. Regarding it would be a shopping center in the Gateway B4 district. All right, then I'll make a motion to close the public hearing on this matter, being the petition to amend the zoning regulation, section 53 standards for motor vehicles for separation distance for fueling pump stations.
Second.
Seconded by Jerry Lewis. All in favor of closing the public hearing on this, signify by saying aye. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Motion carries unanimously. All right, does the commission need any additional input from any other sources? Or are we okay to deliberate on this matter? And is tonight the time you want to do that? So we have a
Yes.
consensus among the commission members that we can deliberate and decide on this evening. That's like, from what I found, looking at the regulations and regarding the history of fueling pumps, service stations, it used to be called filling stations, whatever, that the regulations of 50 years ago have worked pretty well over the course of time. And with regard to the convenience factor for shoppers to go to a gas station on the same trip as a grocery store, doesn't, to me, override the effective results of a 50-year-old regulation, while at the same time I have noted that the number of fuel pumps in Old Saybrook has declined over the course of years. Certainly since I've lived here, since I've been aware of what's in this town, the number is going down. I don't feel the need to increase the number of gas stations. Anyone else have any comments? Or none appearing. I've looked at all four of the proposed text changes, and they all result in a potential increase in the number of gas stations possible in the town of Old Saybrook. And despite the fact that the Planning Commission sees it as consistent with the plan of conservation and development, we give that its due consideration, but we're not obligated to follow that recommendation. And this is a legislative decision for the zoning commission to consider. So with that in mind and being cognizant of what may or may not happen with this motion, I will make a motion to deny the petition to amend the old Saybrook zoning regulations, section 53 standards for motor vehicles, the separation distance for fuel pumping stations in its entirety of all four options. Is there a second? There is no second, the motion fails. Is there a motion regarding approval? There is.
No, I didn't.
No, he did not, no. There is no motion for, there's no second for the motion to deny. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Jerry Lewis makes a motion to approve. Which one of the four options have you selected to put forth as the proposed
So,
text change?
the petition is this the one right here?
There are four
Effective
options.
increase, yeah, for motor
Yeah,
vehicle. Okay.
three are correctly described in the agenda, and
Oh, but
one
one.
has been changed.
Oh,
Been
okay.
modified by the revised text that was submitted this evening.
That's me.
That was number 3, the third amendment.
Well, do we have to do them? I mean, the third amendment
And the
is the
materials submitted at the previous public hearing, where Mr. Royston wrapped up the evening for us, included the Arch Law Group,
do I have to mention all of them?
the different text proposed.
Well, I mean, you could move to adopt one of them and deny the other 3. I mean, because I think it's all got to get cleaned up in some way when you vote.
I know it does, yeah. So it's kind of
Yeah, well.
confusing right now.
I leave it to those interested in moving to approve to select the wording of what would be approved.
You, everybody?
Yeah,
Everybody should be muted.
Please, if you're online, please mute your
Unless it's been hacked.
connection. Thank you.
so where can I read from then? Because this is the third one, right? The revised
That's
third
the first-
amendment.
This is the first amendment.
Yeah,
This is the second. The third you have this evening, and that's the fourth. There's all four,
okay. Why do I have to pick just one?
because it's a text amendment. You have to be specific about which text.
Well,
would
so
be
the
adopted.
revised third amendment is the one that I'll use.
All right, so if the motion would contain a motion to approve the modified third amendment as presented this evening and deny the first, the second, and the fourth amendment.
Yes, that's what I'm gonna do. That's my motion.
Denying the other 3.
Yes,
Second.
he seconded it.
Seconded, motion second, Jared Lewis motion to adopt the third amendment, denying first, second, and fourth amendments proposed, was seconded by Mark Delmonico. Is there any discussion on the motion to approve? That would be Sandy and Mark and Jerry and I, sorry, Justin. I think I've made my stance clear that 50 years the regulation has withstood the test of time. The trend is downward, and the addition of fossil fuel related pumping station is a short-term use possibility at best. Anyone else? All right, call the motion. All those in favor of Jerry Lewis's motion to approve text amendment version number 3, denying 1, 2, and 4, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
1, 2. All right, those opposed say nay.
No.
1, 2, 3. Three nays, 2 ayes. Jerry Lewis and Mark Delmonico voted in favor. Mark Delmonico, Sandy DeSenzo, and Bob Friedman voting in opposition to the motion. The motion fails.
Calderon.
The application is denied. Next up on the agenda is, yes, Mr. Roy.
May I suggest that, since the motion to deny them all didn't receive a second, this was just to approve one and deny the others.
Yes.
I think there should be the opportunity to, before adjourning, to allow the opportunity for one of the other ones.
It was the opportunity for all 4 was considered equally. 1 was chosen. The other 3 were included in the motion as being denied.
Correct. But the only motion was to approve one and deny all the others.
Yeah, that was.
Yes, that was the motion.
Your motion.
Right,
is
right,
denied.
So I'm simply
Yeah.
requesting that the opportunity be provided for one of the other
Those which were denied as part of the motion.
that were
Why would they
Light of
be,
the-
why would they be considered anew without a new application?
only because the preference might have been not to approve the one which limited it to the shopping center in the B4, but rather to go back to one of the other ones, which are the 3 amendments. One just to allow one additional within the zone. The other one is to
Well, we're aware of what the other proposals were,
okay, I
but I
just,
see it in terms of a motion that denied them. And that a motion to deny all 4 would not have provided any opportunity to consider any of the 4 individually because all 4 would be denied. So a motion to approve one of the 4, clearly denying the other 3, is a reflection of a selection of the least objectionable one as being capable of being adopted, and that was denied by vote. And the other 3 were denied as part of the motion. It was not a one at a time motion. It was pick the best one and deny the others. So all of the others have officially been denied.
I can simply state here, it was denied as part of a motion to approve one of those. And it made sense if one were going to approve that the other ones are out of the question. But once that's done,
I think this is always a difficulty when we get these multi-headed petitions. So, I mean, I think what Attorney Royston is really looking for is that the 3 that were denied get denied again. He would like to have one of them approved, but that's really what he's saying. So whether you want to or not, or whether you're going to say on the record that you considered the motion that you made, since that didn't go forward, then none of them have the opportunity to be approved. Is that my understanding, or do you want to?
Well, the motion that Bob made to deny
I will make a motion to
was not
deny
seconded.
text amendment options on the petition to amend the Old Saybrook zoning regulation, section 353, standards for motor vehicles for separation distance for fuel pumping stations. My motion is to deny the remaining 3, which were not officially not approved by a vote, and to deny options number 1, 2, and 4 specifically. Is there a second to the motion? My motion to deny the other 3. Not appearing, the motion fails. There is no second. Now it's up to someone to put forth a motion to adopt one of the other 3. We can do them one at a time.
Well, what David is asking you though is that only one, I made the motion to approve number 3.
Yes,
So the other 3, are you saying are still on the table? Is that what you were asking?
he would like that to be.
Yes.
that I don't believe the combination of them with the motion to deny all of them, which didn't receive a second,
Mhm,
and then combining it with the approval of one
right,
really
Okay.
answers the question.
Yeah.
And the commission is going to make whatever decision it makes. I just think that it would be easier if you just considered each one, 1, 2, and 4.
oh, you want to do
Make a
that?
motion for you two to go down as 3-2 vote for all of them and it's over. Basically, that's what you're saying.
Okay, so you
Yeah,
want us to
yeah, that's-
deny
If
again?
that's the,
He
Yep,
wants to
yep,
vote on
that's okay.
each.
Right, yes, I
If
understand.
that's the case,
Just go through it.
if everybody,
Yeah,
if
okay.
everybody votes that way.
All right. So you're making a motion to deny,
I made a motion to deny the
And nobody
remaining
seconded
three,
it.
and it was
One
not
at a
seconded.
so you want to do one at a time?
No. It's
You
up to,
don't?
it's up for somebody else to make a motion to approve one of the other three now. And then we'll do the third, if necessary, we'll do the third and the fourth. I've made my motions.
You're being very stubborn tonight.
I didn't get a second. You're
I
right.
know,
You're-
well, I'm not
So
making.
now
a
you,
motion.
those who are in favor
Deny.
of adopting a text amendment of the remaining three would make a motion to adopt. And then they would be voted on.
it's a moot point, it's gonna be a 3-2
Is there-
vote.
is there a
So I
vote?
make
Is
the
I
there-
motion.
know,
Don't make
it'll
the
be a
motion.
3-2
It's the
vote,
same
yeah,
thing.
anyway.
Is there a motion to come forthcoming in favor of adopting the text change amendment? If there is no motion, what happens then, Mr. Willis? There is no motion to approve it.
Well, I mean, we have a little bit of an interesting procedural issue.
Yeah.
Which, I'd like somebody to rifle through these either as a group or one at a time. Either approve them or deny them, so we don't have any lingering questions about the vote that was originally taken. It's just to approve 3. And deny the other 3, that didn't pass. So we know 3 has been denied. Now, 1, 2, and 4, someone can make a motion to approve those or to deny those, however you want to do it. But that would be a quick way to do it.
All right. I mean, I did 3 and that failed. So I'll make a motion to approve option 1.
Option one is,
I mean, where there's 1, 2, and 4 left.
yes, option one is.
So you want us to do this one at a time?
Well, let's read the option, number 53.1, standards, motor vehicle uses. Part B, no pump or other fuel filling devices for the retail sale of gasoline or other motor vehicle fuel in any lot will be located within less than 25 feet of any street line or property line. No more than one additional motor vehicle fueling station will be located within a radius of 1,000 feet of any pump or other fuel filling devices on any other lot.
And I
That's
second.
up,
Okay,
that's.
so we got a
option
second, so that was the First Amendment. You can take it from here, Bob.
And vote on it.
Jerry Lewis is proposing, making a motion to adopt that option.
Mark seconded.
And Mark Monaco
Second.
Have you vote.
seconds that. Any discussion on the motion? Once again,
We already know what you're
I-
gonna say. Let's just
yes,
get
but
through
for,
this.
for the record, as part of the deliberation on the motion, it's important to say that the 50-year-old regulation has served us well. The decline in existing gas pumps has been obvious over the course of years. And the need for future fossil fuel fueling stations in town is short-lived at best, and I don't think that's the right way to go.
We got that.
All in favor of Jerry Lewis's motion, seconded by Mark Delmonico to adopt standard, text change number 1, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Mark Delmonico and Jerry Lewis have voted in favor of the motion. All those opposed to option number 1, Jerry Lewis's motion to approve the text change, signify by saying nay. Nay. 3-2, the motion is denied.
Okay, you want to read number 2?
Number 2,
You gotta make a motion. to-
I'm making the motion. Go ahead and read it.
you have to make the motion for the record. since we're doing this, to satisfy Mr. Royston's procedural interest, we will do the procedure the way it will withstand any objections to our doing it. You have to make a motion, you have to make a motion to adopt the option that you're interested in adopting.
Okay, do
And
we
then-
have number, oh no, this is number 3. This is number 2. Okay, so the motion is, no pump or other fuel filling devices for the retail sale of gasoline or other motor vehicle fuel on any lot will be located within less than 25 feet of any street line or property line. No motor vehicle fueling station will be located within a radius of 1,000 feet of any pump or other fuel filling devices or device on any other lot. Okay, so except that in the Gateway Business B4 District, one additional motor vehicle fueling station may be located or within a radius of 1,000 feet of any pump or other fuel filling devices or device on any other lot.
Is there a second to Jerry Lewis's motion to adopt option number 2? Second. Mark Delmonico seconds the motion. Any discussion?
Are you gonna go through that again?
Yes, it's part of the deliberation on your motion. It has to be part of the record.
Yeah.
That the regulation regarding a fuel pump separation of 1,000 feet has been in our regulations for 50 years now. And has stood the test of time while
Good.
at the same, and over the same period, the number of filling stations in Old Saybrook has declined. The number of filling stations in the future regarding fossil fuels is a short-lived proposition at best, and I don't feel the need to increase those.
All in favor?
All in favor of Jerry Lewis's motion to adopt option number 2 of the 4 proposed by Mr. Royston's applicant, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Mark Delmonico and Jerry Lewis vote in favor of the motion. All those opposed to option number 2 signify by saying nay. Nay. 3 opposed. Motion fails.
One more. Okay.
4.
Number 4. Okay, the motion is, on number 4. The 4th amendment is no pump or other fuel filling devices for the retail.
Hold on.
Is that it?
Let me make sure there was
That's the one right there.
a copy do we have, I have to ask Joanne, do we have a copy, the updated copy of the number 4? The one that I have did not have the underlining.
I don't.
Does anyone have the version of number 4, which includes the underlying portion, which indicates the new language? The copy that I got in my packet is not different from the existing regulation.
That's the only one I have.
The new language to the 4th Amendment?
Yeah, there is.
4th Amendment, yes.
The new language was for the 3rd. But that was what he handed us tonight.
The hard copy that I have says, after 4th Amendment, there's a paragraph, and then it says changes to existing text are indicated by a strike through, new text added is underlined. And the copy that I have for 53.1, it has motor vehicle uses underlined, and there is nothing else with strike through or underlining on my copy. So this is not a change from
That's not the most up-to-date one then?
this is not the most
I
up-to-date
don't have it. That's-
material. Somebody else has on the commission,
Okay, David. That's Dave.
and is there a way for staff to get this material outside of the public hearing with the updated 4th Amendment words?
Let me go grab the file.
I was surprised that the,
I brought this up at the first meeting, and I was told at that point in time that there was another revised version
had the copy.
that included the underlining for the new text.
It's supposed to have 1,000 inspected.
Supposed to what?
The word is 1,000 feet, it's supposed to be crossed out. Which is interesting.
Right, well,
But it's not.
That's second, that's third.
it doesn't appear. on
It
my
doesn't
copy.
appear with the change.
Right, and so, yeah, the motion would have to be very specific to include the strike through. Which there isn't. Agreed. That's not on paper.
Will you give me that one?
Those in the audience, I apologize for the delay, but we have to follow the procedure.
So this is not the one.
This is what I have as the fourth amendment.
Oh, okay.
I think that's fine.
Oh, yeah, you crossed it out, and then that's crossed out.
All right, so we have received from staff, Attorney Willett, an updated hard copy, which shows the strike through that comprises the Fourth Amendment. Jerry Lewis, would you care to make a motion?
I will make a motion, to approve the Fourth Amendment, to approve the Fourth Amendment, which is, excuse me, no pump or other fuel filling devices for the retail sale of gasoline or other motor vehicle fuel on any lot will be located within less than 25 feet of any street line or property line, or within a radius of 500 feet of any pump on any other lot.
Is there a second? Second. Mark Delmonico, second, Jerry Lewis's motion. Any discussion on the motion? Once again, I would say that the 50-year-old regulation regarding separation of 1,000 feet does not require change. The trend has been fewer fueling stations with fossil fuels over the years, and the likelihood of additional is short-lived in the future and not necessary for Old Saybrook.
Thank you.
All those in favor of Jerry Lewis's motion to adopt amendment text change number 4, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Mark Delmonico and Jerry Lewis signified that they are in favor of the motion. All those opposed to the motion say nay. Nay. The motion fails. The same three, Mark Delmonico, Bob Friedman, Sandy Costanzo vote against the motion. The motion is denied. There are no remaining text change amendments possible this evening. All have failed to receive approval. That completes our action on this agenda item. Next on the agenda. Fine settled dispensary. Application for special exception use for 4,000 square foot adult use marijuana dispensary at 233 Boston Post Road, assessors map 44, lot 11 in the Gateway Business B4 District. Applicant FFDN ELV LLC, Fine Settle, agent attorney Amy Fulton. Susan.
I guess I just need to show up more often.
All right, where we have received some new traffic information and a modified statement of use with operating conditions. Anything else?
That is what we are here for. Where we concluded last time was that, we had presented our response comments at the hearing. Mr. Del Rio, your peer reviewer, had not had the opportunity to review our written response, but generally agreed during the course of the hearing. And so he sent a letter late last week with the rest of his comments. In response, I submitted and have hard copies tonight, a draft what I would describe as an operational condition, outlining a number of things specifically related to parking management and some of the questions that had been raised by members of the commission or the public about how to manage the online sales. So with that, I don't know if your preference is to hear from Mr. Del Rio and whatever concluding comments he might have. If you want to hear from me first on the condition, so you understand that condition in the context of his comments, whatever the commission's preference is.
What do you think? Mr. Del Rio? Sure. Yes, please. Mrs. Del Rio online, Greg Del Rio. Our clerk is activating. Okay. Is it working?
Sure. Unmute.
He has to unmute himself.
He's still muted. Here he is.
Can you hear me?
Hear you. Okay, we hear you.
Okay, I'm in. Can you see me? You can't see me. All right.
Turn your camera on.
Put your camera.
Okay, hello, everyone. Greg Del Rio, Principal Transportation Engineer for Hardesty and Hanover, peer review for this project. Yes, so we had received comments and September 7th from SLR regarding some of our comments, response to comments, I should say. And basically, in short, the responses were all acceptable. Most of them had to do with traffic. There was one major one with the parking issue. And they have provided a parking management plan to mitigate any impacts in case the parking demands do exceed, especially during the initial opening. So they've submitted that on Friday. We took a look at the parking management plan. It doesn't have the specifics of the plan. It has the generalities of their approach. Basically they address the issues that we had identified. So as long as that parking management plan can be implemented, we think that they can mitigate any potential parking impacts.
Right. Do you have any questions? No?
What's the parking management?
Pardon me? Wait, hold on. We'll get to. Okay. All right. All right. Proceed.
Sure. So with that, I'll follow up on Mr. Del Rio's comments. So what we outlined in that draft condition is in fact a parking management plan that would be reviewed by your staff prior to any operations on our part. That would basically outline the things that we have discussed during the course of the public hearing, that we've alluded to, that we've used in other sites, whether that be use of a parking attendant, involvement of a parking management operator such as LAS parking, or off-site employee parking. We are in discussions with a number of the neighboring property owners about who may have available spaces that we could use for off-site parking for employees if that becomes necessary. I do have a letter that we got today from the owner of 256 Boston Post Road, which is across the street, indicating, confirming for the record, it's not just me, that we are in discussions about a letter, basically working toward a letter of intent that would become part of that parking management plan to use some of the spaces. That is the Cloud 9 property.
Regulations do not provide for off-site parking.
It's not, it would be supplemental parking. This is none of our
Our
required parking.
regulations do not have a category for supplementary parking.
Right. So this goes back to the notion of a parking management plan. It's not necessarily that we're providing required parking offsite, and certainly you're not the only town that doesn't allow required parking offsite. This would be as part of the parking management plan. If we needed to park vehicles offsite, that would be part of the parking management. So we are fully compliant with the regulation on site.
Correct.
This would be supplemental in the event that, for example, we wanted an employee who's here off hours to park off site, Or for, you know, more likely, what if we had somebody who is the parking manager?
Understood. And as part of your parking management program, you can manage your parking as you see fit. But I have a concern about including your parking management program entailing off-site parking under any circumstances as what might be approval under our regulations. And that I don't want our regulations to be muddied with the possibility of supplemental off-site parking, since there's no provision in our regulations for that. While at the same time, the property is a big triangle. And there is additional property that is not proposed to be developed as part of this application on the opposite side of the wetlands. And so you have property on which you could have employee parking and not require any supplemental off-site parking whatsoever.
Which would theoretically require wetlands approval, because we would, based on the location of the wetlands, we would absolutely need wetlands approval for.
No,
Anything else.
there's upland property outside of the wetlands area on the other side of the wetlands, which could accommodate parking. You have not elected to utilize the property that exists as part of this application. Here is the site plan with wetlands indicated here.
Correct.
Even allowing for a 50-foot wetland regulated area setback, that would be 50 feet. There's still additional property in this triangle along Springbrook Road, which is upland area, non-wetland regulated, where there could be parking for employees.
Correct, except for the fact that the only way to access that parking would be through the wetlands. We would not be able.
Or by a sidewalk that would go along Route 1 and Springbrook Road. The employees parking there could then walk on a sidewalk, which would get to the building.
And one other issue, we had talked at the last meeting about the possibility of the existing parking in the front yard setback remaining in place, and you felt very strongly. The parking that you're talking about would be in the front yard setback. I'd need a variance to do that.
Which parking?
If we were to, if you don't mind,
Okay.
if you're discussing here,
Outside of 50-foot wetland regulated buffer, there's still a sizable piece of upland property which would accommodate a 25-foot front yard setback and a 25-foot and a 10-foot perimeter buffer, where there would be adequate space for approximately 8 cars. We're not talking about paved parking here. We're talking about impervious parking spaces on site for the employees without entailing any proposed off-site supplemental situation whatsoever. The uncomfortable factor from the regulation perspective is that you have provided all of the required parking based on retail use of gross floor area and complied with the setbacks of the regulations. There's no regulation. The regulations stipulate that employee parking should be designated on parking spaces, but there's no regulation that says that employee parking is above and beyond the parking requirement based on gross floor area. So you have compliance as long as you show some parking spaces for employees, you will have complied, but there is not a requirement for additional parking for employees above and beyond that which is tied to the gross floor area. And so your supplemental parking off-site is technically unnecessary because you have complied. We understand that you understand, we all understand, we have concerns about parking management on site, and yet you're parking the other piece we got with the amended statement of use, the operation
Yeah.
plan. should be sufficient to address that without invoking any supplemental off-site parking.
And I agree with you, and my client agrees with you. Operationally, we have no concern about the fact that the 27 parking spaces that we propose are more than sufficient to operate this facility based on our experience elsewhere. What we heard was during the course of the commission's discussions, some of the comments from the public was a concern that maybe we were wrong. And so what we were looking at through the parking management plan, and I've done this in other contexts and situations, is trying to look at options that would give you basically belt and suspenders to be able to feel comfortable that if we're wrong, we're not going to have cars backed up on Boston Post Road. We absolutely don't. And so I think to your point is that is also where our condition about the online sales requirement, if you got rid of the parking management plan and anything with respect to off-site employee parking, what we've done in the operational condition by limiting the number of appointments is basically getting us to the number of parking spaces on site
Correct.
with a conservative factor.
Right.
So what you heard from Mr. Zacks at the last meeting was that our average customer time, come in, leave, et cetera, is about 4 minutes. What we've done is provide 10-minute intervals. Mr. Del Rio asked, well, there could be some overlap. What if somebody's slow, everything else like that? So with the condition as we proposed, no more than 8 appointments per 10 minutes with all of the employees, that would put us, if all 16 people in that 20 minutes were there and we had the employees, that would be a demand of 30. We have 27. We don't think that that's truly going to happen, which is why we're comfortable with this, that there's only a small amount.
3 employees could park over here.
And I think frankly, the Wetlands Commission might have a question about that. That
They might,
regardless
They
of,
might, but there's adequate land there, which is not part of the wetland regulated 50-foot inland wetland, 50-foot regulated area. I got a scale.
I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do. And I understand your point. I think operationally, we don't think it's necessary and we see it here. If you want us to condition exploring the possibility of additional on-site parking, you could certainly ask this. It can't be a requirement because
No.
it's another.
Right.
And I think what we've said is that we certainly, as you acknowledge, we satisfy your regulatory requirement. This is, I think, some of the uncertainty is that this is a new use, not only for you, but for a lot of the public. And but I think if that was a question, we could certainly incorporate that into the parking management plan, that if we had, if you wanted us to look at the possibility of additional on-site parking, we could incorporate that into a consideration in the plan.
Right. In our regulation, section 62 regarding parking, it'll take me a while to find it, but it says that all parking for the proposed use will be on the same lot.
Correct.
And so any plan that incorporates supplemental parking off-site is contradictory to our regulations. That's how I see it.
I would disagree with you, but you're the chairman. And I understand that might be interpretation, but I think the fact is that there's a difference between required parking and what would be completely supplemental.
Right, understood. And in the extreme case, a business might have sufficient parking to comply with the regulations regarding parking count per square foot gross floor area and provide 0 parking for their employees. That's hypothetically possible. And in that case, we'd be where we are here. Where are they going to park? And if there was additional lit property that was not utilized as part of the application, that would be the first option in my view. And so there is land there where cars can park and not be in any wetland setback. That's what I'll say now. And if you're concerned about the people who may or may not park there being employees and having to walk to the building, Now we're to the pedestrian factor of the safety of this site. Different from the previous approval of the medical dispensary. This is an intensification of use, more employees, more customer visits per open period. And it's also an expansion of the medical use from 2,600 to 4,000 square feet. And being as such, we're no longer obligated to stick with our prior decision to not require sidewalks because this is intensification and expansion. And if we did require sidewalks along Route 1 Springbrook Road, then we get into where would they go? Well, that's another question, but there's encroachment. As we saw earlier this evening, sidewalks can be located in the right of way. An encroachment permit from the DOT, Connecticut DOT is required, but that's a possibility.
And we discussed that last time. We did discuss that last time.
Right, and the crossing of the wetland then, and this, whatever this underground drainage thing, that's not our concern at this point. But that there is a possibility for a sidewalk here to provide a walking connection for pedestrians who may, employees, if you will, have parked in the upland area and the otherwise unused portion of the property on the northeast corner of the triangle.
And I agree with you that that's how employees could walk to the building, but we need to get their cars there. And so that would involve a wetlands crossing. And that's why
I don't see it as involving the wetlands as long as you stay out of the 50-foot regulated area. There's a dirt, what do we call it?
Turnaround.
Pull off, turn around.
There's a dirt turn, it's not a turn, it's a turn off kind of a thing along Springbrook Road.
Yeah.
The existing conditions include a dirt turnoff. And it seems to me that even though it is Route 1, that if a car has all four wheels off the pavement and outside the right of way in a dirt turnoff, that they would consider that to be a usable parking space in order to access the building. And if that's the case, then a sidewalk would improve public safety and might reduce the use of that dirt turnoff there if employees parked on the dry, non-wetland portion of this triangle.
So what I just asked Mr. Sobelin, if that would require any work there, in addition to, let's assume for the moment, it's outside of the Wetlands Commission jurisdiction. It would require approval by DOT as part of the encroachment permit process. Because it requires a curb cut.
A curb cut.
So it either, we'd have to cross the wetlands or we'd need DOT approval.
Well, an encroachment permit would be the same for a sidewalk,
It's
right?
same.
Yes, okay.
Different criteria.
Do you want-
And in my experience, the DOT with regard to curb cut and or encroachment permits requires local approval first before they consider such a thing. Is that correct? First, the locals have to approve
Yes,
things that the DOT considers post-approval. So there's really no difference between sidewalk with an encroachment and a DOT curb cut. They would have to be approved by this commission before the DOT would consider it either or both.
Correct, David Sullivan for the record from SLR. There's no hard and fast legislation or anything like that that makes them consider it, but they do prefer that the local municipalities have weighed in on it before they issue the encroachment permit. So they'll sometimes give us feedback early on. So you're mostly right because they won't issue the encroachment permit if there's not an approved site to do that too. What I will point out though is their criteria for approving a curb cut is different than their criteria for approving a sidewalk. The sidewalk, they're looking at certain parameters. For a curb cut, they're going to want to look at sight lines, the geometry of the driveway, the drainage, make sure there's not drainage impacts spilling back onto
the state highway. So it may be the very same permit, but their criteria for approval of a curb cut is much more stringent than it is for sidewalk.
Find it. Give me a second. Okay, other fencing and street loading. Thank you. 62.4.4 off-street parking requirements and determining the appropriate parking requirements to be applied to a specific use. The decision of the commission will be final. So while you meet the stated parking requirements based on retail and gross floor area, the actual use of medical marijuana recreational dispensary, marijuana dispensary recreational is a use which is not specifically listed in our regulations, and therefore the additional spaces, 62.4.4A, the commission may require additional parking spaces where the nature of development, its location, or other unique features require additional parking. So we can do this. We could require parking for how many parking spaces would you propose for your supplemental off-site parking?
The off-site discussions we're having with Cloud9, they have available 15 additional.
15.
We don't think we need all of
No,
those,
I don't
anywhere near that many, but they would make that many available to us
Well,
based on their.
Based on the more recent traffic report that we got, pedestrian safety is an issue at this intersection that has a stop sign with a lot of rolling stops, as every local person knows. And to have pedestrians cross Route 1 is not preferred over providing any kind of supplemental parking on the same lot. Pedestrian safety is a concern for this commission. Traffic engineers provide traffic studies, which is primarily vehicle movement through time and space, and they love to maximize it. They're not concerned about pedestrians, but we are. And so my approach is to put some supplemental parking that will fit in the upland, non-wetland regulated area of the same property on the same side of the street, connected by a sidewalk that may be in an encroachment in the Route 1 Springbrook Road right away that would provide for safety of those who would park in those spaces. Much safer than parking across the street at Cloud. All right, so we have the means in our regulation section 52.2.4.4. And it seems to me that as long as we don't require the approval of the Inland Wetlands Commission for additional parking spaces, you fit what you can, and that'll be enough. The parking management amendment to the statement of use, we'll get to the details of that. But if that works, then that should manage to provide safe enough access to and from the site and its on-site parking without congestion in the streets.
And if you would like to condition any approval on including a condition that we analyze and determine whether or not, or how many spaces we can get in that area, subject to DOT encroachment permit process. We're happy.
Subject to inland wet, stay out of the wetland regulated area and provide how many spaces, whatever you can fit there. And that would be the best to locate as employee parking. Otherwise, it becomes like a cell phone lot at the airport. People would park there and wait for their appointment to show up. And that's not part of your plan. That's not what we want,
Correct.
right? So,
So yeah, that's certainly, that's the commission's preference that we explore and condition exploration of additional parking spaces on site. We're happy to accept that condition.
all right. We've got a copy of the parking management plan that we just got. I buried mine. If you do have that.
It's not really a plan.
There was also mention of the.
It's just a statement.
Just the state written all over mine right there.
Yeah, well, it's part D that I wish to talk about. I can't follow part D. Here, you want this?
Do you want to grab it?
It says that the operation condition would be in place for 6 months. That's, I would hope for longer than 6 months, it makes sense. But then it says something here. Part D, following the initial opening period, which is defined in the first sentence as the first 6 months is the initial opening period. So part D means following the first 6 months, but in no events earlier than October 1st of next year. And so the 6 month period is the first initial period that is locked in on some calendar. If that period expires before October 1st, if it expires on October 1st, 2023, everything's clear. But since the first 6 months of operation, initial period, might expire before October 1st of next year, what happens then? Because it says, but in no event earlier than October 1st, the applicant may continue to operate the facility in accordance with the terms of this condition, or may apply to modify these terms.
I will.
So it's entirely up to the applicant to choose whether or not to continue to use the operation condition as described.
I apologize. That is not my legislative intent. So let me explain what I want to clarify. So number one, this is based on the thought process that we anticipate if we were approved based on the work and everything else. Hopefully opening sometime in the March to April timeframe based on the work that needs to happen to the building and licensing and all that kind of stuff. So the idea was at least 6 months. So you would have the benefit of having a whole summer season where we think it's going to be busy as that thing, which is why we picked October 1st. So we could not come back. Then what I intended this to mean, and clearly I should reword it, is that we would need to come back to you. We can either, as of October 1st, we can continue abiding by this condition, or if it turns out that there are no parking issues, there's no problems, and everybody's generally content with how the facility is operating, and maybe you might let us have 10 appointments per 10 minutes because you haven't seen any problems, that then we would come back to you with that data, with parking, with transactional data, with parking operations, et cetera, no earlier than October 1st of next year, and say, we've been open for 6 months or 8 months, or maybe it's a year, whatever it is. We'd like to modify this condition and allow more appointments or
All right, so
expand the hours of operation.
all right, with that portion of item D, it's a wording issue, as I understand it. Minimum 6 months, and if after 6 months, but not earlier than the beginning of October, you should come back to, and you and the commission would review this parking situation. So, Mr. Willis, you're gonna end up having to advise us in terms of the wording to accomplish 6 months minimum review of the operational condition at that time, such that it may be required to continue, or it may no longer, or it may be modified. Let's leave it at that. Then the next sentence. Any changes to the operation shall be deemed a minor amendment to this approval, and any application to modify shall include information regarding blah, blah, blah. So I object to that because hands to this commission at this time with these individuals, the determination of whether or not it's a minor modification, and takes that out of the hands of any future commission and who might constitute that. And so with regard to minor and major modifications in section 5113, that those modifications should be left to the commission. The commission to me means the body that exists at the time there's an application, not this commission predetermining that it is minor at some point in the future. So Part D should be limited to the operation conditions, time period, 6 months, review, modify after that, and the commission at that time would determine if it's a minor mod to an approved special exception. If we get there. Right. All right, so, anyone else have any-
What's the ongoing controls of that? I would wonder though, after the year, you still continue to monitor that somehow?
If
Because they could lift and open up the schedule to unlimited, and then their parking would be a problem. How do you continue to monitor that? Is my question.
So, well, I presume that locals and or the local traffic authority in the form of the police chief would be aware if there were any traffic congestion issues at the entrance to the parking lot. Traffic engineers are not the ones to ask. Sorry, Mr. Del Rio, but they're going to talk about level of service, and level of service has letter grades, and it's letter C now, and that's acceptable. If things backed up for up to a minute, it might go from C to D, and that's still acceptable. So don't invoke the traffic engineers. It's going to be based on interpretation by local experience and from our local traffic authority, the chief of police at that time.
Right. And just to be clear, the intention of this condition was to have us, it basically codifies a condition of approval, what we've represented, that we would do online sales only, there would be pickup windows designated, et cetera. If we wanted to change that, then we need to come back to you. So if we didn't want to change it and we worked in perpetuity with online sales and pickups and in the stated intervals, then you might never need to see us because everything's operating, everybody's happy. If it turned out that we did that without your permission, that would technically be a zoning violation. Your zoning enforcement officer can issue a cease and desist or fine. And like the chairman mentioned, I suspect that if there were traffic issues, which is really what people would respond to, that's where I think it would
Trigger.
it would become obvious, frankly, because that's where the problem would become. Ben Sachs is actually on the Zoom. I couldn't see.
I'd say BZ.
Yes, please.
Hi. Can you hear me?
We
Yes.
can hear you.
Yeah.
Hi, sorry I'm not in person. I spent the last day in the hospital with my 3-month-old, but all is safe and well. But so these conditions were in part drafted up from how other operators have done these in other states, because, you know, and I'm not going to predict the future, but the realities of the past have been that there is an initial demand or an expectation of demand that begins to taper off over time as more competition comes in. And so the ideas of these, of not exactly, I guess, how it was written, but was to be able to, you know, watch, assess, put measures into place to be able to handle it, and then from there be able to make a change if it was deemed appropriate or necessary. And so, for example, in one of our other locations, you know, they expected us to do X amount of traffic. We did about 30% of X, you know, significantly less. And so we went back to amend the change, which was approved because the ultimate reality versus the expectation of traffic was significantly less. And so exactly as Amy said, we would be able to, you know, assess the period work on it, and then, if we ever wanted to change, be able to apply to make a change, and that would be deemed a change in a condition of a special exception by, and I'm not going to word this commission properly, the Chairman Freeman, but by the zoning authority of the town of Old Saybrook, whether it be you specific individuals in this commission or a future commission with other people. The other thing to note of, because one person asked, how do you track this? Based on the law of the state and based on the law of the state, we have to track every single transaction, as I noted, in every single product that goes through any transaction. And so this is data that is readily accessible for us. There are reports that we can pull. We don't keep people's individual names because of civil liberty laws, but they get a unique identifier of the transaction at the time, et cetera. And so we'd be able to see, we'd be quite quickly and quite able to see how many transactions happen in this time, in this window. We can see when we were busiest and least busy. We can see trends over time. We can see specific data points of the year. So that information becomes readily available if it's so requested from anyone, or if it's requested in the potential of changing a condition based on the realities of the circumstance. So, I wanted to make sure that I hit on those, and then also the feasibility of being able to track this, which is, by law, quite simple for us.
Okay.
I have a suggestion, if I may, and it may just kind of take all the time aspect of this on there and just leave this as, rather than an initial opening period, this is what the condition is. You want to come back and change it someday, you come back and change it someday.
Right.
Because I think that whole time frame thing has just caused confusion.
Got it. Yeah, we just originally had done that because, since Old Saybrook is obviously busier in the summer, we wanted to confirm that we'd have the specific, but if we just sort of make it towards perpetuity, that doesn't make a difference to us. We've just seen some want it to be sort of referenced, and others, in this case, it seems clearly don't. So we're amenable on either direction of how that's done.
Yeah.
That's fine.
To have an initial time period is immaterial. Just do it this way until we have experience. This is a new use in Old Saybrook. How many visits per hour were projected? I seem to recall a number
So
45.
correct, that was what we estimated to be sort of the average.
Okay.
What we've incorporated into the condition is 8 appointments per 10-minute period, so that theoretically.
There are 6 10-minute periods in an hour.
Correct.
6 times 8 is 48.
That there are available appointments. If you felt that needed to be 7, so we're under the 40, but that was the rationale that for the peak, we think we're a little, the initial peak's probably a little higher, and then we actually, what we said is we're probably closer to 40 as we average out, and so then 8 gives,
Correct.
somebody can't make that 10 minutes, but certainly if you were more comfortable with that being 7, so we're under that peak.
No, 8 will work. I'd be happy with a fraction, but most people are uncomfortable. Just leave it at 8. No. It's 10.66 minutes per. No. per trip.
I did the math that it was because we were looking at it from the parking perspective.
Yeah.
So if that's why when we did the math, we were comfortable that the 8 appointments was enough turnover, but left a little bit of leeway that if somebody was
Right.
slow.
Any other questions? Comments? Commissioner? All right. This is a public hearing, and at this time we will open it to the public for comments in favor of this application or in opposition to this application, specifically related to zoning matters. We have been made aware of traffic concerns. We have been made aware that the federal law does not permit marijuana sales. We are aware of that. We're talking about the conditions under which this commission has to consider this application with regard to the regulations in our book And if we would get comments that would address that, that would be helpful. Is there anyone present in the room wishing to get? Chief Spiro. Chief Spiro, our local traffic authority, wishes to speak either in favor of or in opposition to this application.
Chief Spiro?
Chief Spiro, are you there?
Oh, we can come back to it. There's also somebody else that'd like to speak.
Okay, we'll,
Okay, Jacqueline?
all right, we'll go with Jacqueline. Allowed to talk.
Jacqueline?
Jacqueline,
Oh, she's not.
you're muted. We can,
I have to promote her because, I know.
Zoom meeting participant Jacqueline
Give her a second.
with a hand raised. No. Not working.
Jacqueline?
We may come back in a moment. Anyone in the room here wishing to speak in favor of or in opposition to this application?
Yes.
Please identify yourself for the record.
Good evening. My name is Mark McCarthy, G. Mark McCarthy, and my wife Allison McCarthy and I own Beach Babies Learning Center. I've submitted a few documents tonight to Chris Costa, who posted them on the website. There's quite a few different points that we'd like to discuss tonight in opposition to the Pine Fellow Dispensary.
And I'm sure they have to do with zoning.
Well, I'm not an expert on your zoning law, so I'm going to try to hit the ones that I think are relevant to zoning. You can keep me honest, okay? So clearly, so we're obviously strongly opposed to the FFD EJB LLC application for special exception use. This is based on several points. Our impact to Beach Babies is one of them. We've owned and operated a daycare for 16 years within 5 to 600 feet of this property. Basically, what we're concerned about is that this cannabis business is going to devalue our child care center, the buildings and property, which were actually approved by this zoning commission over 17 years ago. This is creating a safety issue, which quite honestly hasn't been addressed in the zoning regulations. Families are not going to want to have their children attend a facility next to a cannabis dispensary, and we will lose business. We will have dispensary clients turning around in our parking lot. There's clearly going to be parking issues. There's clearly, you guys heard about earlier this evening about the old Saybrook Point Inn, about the parking issues you have there. You're creating another parking issue here. And what's going to happen is people are going to circle in our property. And so we're going to have essentially clients turning around in our parking lot and parking out on our front lawn due to the inadequate parking of the proposed site. There's going to be additional traffic on Boston Post Road, which will actually impact our site. Our clients will be entering, leaving the business, which will increase accidents and put children at risk. Overall, this will severely impact our day-to-day business, our customers, and most importantly, the children that we so diligently care for and protect. Specifically zoning, you could deny this application on several points here. The first is parking lot application. I know there's been a lot of conversation about this, but after studying the plans with my experts and looking at these parking spots and looking at the proposed throttling that they're suggesting, the 48 clients per hour, they say it's going to take 10 minutes for somebody to enter the parking lot, go in their building, get their ID checked, and actually purchase something, walk out, and drive out. It's not viable. 10 minutes is too short. It's going to be more like 15 minutes. So based on that math, it'll require 11 to 12 spots that are needed for appointments. And then you're going to need an additional 6 to 7 spots because there's going to be transitional people coming in and people trying to leave. Additionally, they're talking about 10 to 16 employees at any given time. Hence, it's likely that the total space needed will range from actually 27 spots to 35 spots. quite honestly, the 27 spots that are on their plan today, 2 of them are handicapped. So they're actually only dealing with 25 spots. That'll be really included within there. Their prior submissions have included 56 clients per hour and 15 to 23 employees. So clearly that applicant has reduced the number in an attempt to adjust this mission to fit this property. And quite honestly, I don't think they're going to adhere to it. Given that the parking lot would have to have at least 35 spots versus the available 25 spots to accommodate expected volume, there's going to be serious parking issues that you just talked about Old Saybrook Point Inn. That's going to happen in my neighborhood, which is going to push parking into my business. There's really no oversight except for your rules that you approved today. So if you approve rules today or rules in the next meeting or whenever to really throttle this business, once you approve those rules, they can go and do whatever they want. That yes, they're going to have to come back and talk to you about it when they upset Chief Spiro, who I know is online, who we know personally. But there's no one here that is going to monitor that business daily to make sure that they're in compliance. Who's going to ensure that they're only handling 48 clients per hour? No one. The town's not set up for this daily monitoring. It's not a reasonable plan for their acceptance. The problems with the traffic intersection are a big one. Everyone knows that parking in that traffic intersection, I go by it daily. There's significant issues within that parking section that have been talked about in previous meetings. A traffic light really needs to be installed in a T intersection, the intersection changed to a T intersection. The $50,000 that they propose is about, according to my experts, less than 30% of actually what would be required to actually do that. And that's going to take several years, probably at least a year and a half to actually get those approvals and change the intersection. They're already going to be in business, and this is already going to cause an issue. The additional congestion on Boston Post Road will lead to more accidents. I don't know if you've driven through that intersection recently during a rush hour, but as you take that right and come to that parking lot, that's only like 50 to 100 feet. I drove into that parking lot during rush hour and tried to take a left or right out of that parking lot. It's exceptionally hard. I waited for almost 5 minutes to get out of that parking lot during rush hour. The people coming at you from the right are doing 40 miles an hour, and the people from the left are drifting through the stop sign, which is only 50 to 100 feet away. The intersection is dangerous. The last point is really that the objective of this B4 zone, we're actually in a B3 zone. It's a transitional zone. We actually were a special exception to that zone as a transition between, as I understood it, residential to commercial. Right there, that's where the B3 zone ends and the B4 starts. And this is a gateway to our town, meaning people coming I-95 south are actually going to enter that town. And the first thing that they're going to see is a cannabis dispensary. That's not the Old Saybrook that we decided to put our business in. This dispensary would totally contradict also the millions of dollars investment that we've had on Mariners Way. The time and energy that this entire town has spent trying to develop Mariners Way, which is actually that entire route section connecting the river to the downtown district. This is going to, considerably change. And not only that, it's going to deter other businesses who we wanted to actually improve that area. They're no longer going to want to come because people don't want to be next to a cannabis dispensary. They're not going to want to take the time and the investment to put small businesses next to a cannabis dispensary. So just in conclusion, or in a few last points here, it would be, I believe, incredibly reckless to put this type of business. It's a clientele so close to children of Old Saybrook. attending Beach Bays Learning Center. Quite honestly, I don't think you'd put a liquor store, allow a liquor store to be put next to the high school for the same types of reasons, and that's, you guys have used liquor stores in previous meetings. Old Saybrook's gonna create a precedent for other towns to allow cannabis dispensaries next to other types of schools by making this, by approving this. The cannabis recreational was just approved in June of 2021. The recreational use. Are we really going to take the risk of violating our federal drug-free zones and actually allowing this approval within 600 feet of a daycare? It's going to be the first in our state. And does Old Saybrook really want to take that perception risk on? As well as we talked about the property tax revenue. Chief Spears publicly noted that he needs additional police to, if we're going to allow this. And I expect that we'd see additional publicity regarding this decision. The last piece I want to make sure you guys understand, there was a legal debrief done by a few lawyers that we've hired. They have a number of different concerns over this zoning committee allowing this based on prior rules. The zoning regulations 34.2.16 specifically state the expansion or enlargement of a cannabis dispensary facility or change of use from a cannabis dispensary to a cannabis dispensary facility adult use on properties which have obtained site plan approval prior to January 1st, 2022. So Fine Federal wasn't even actually an established LLC prior to February 11th or prior to January 1st, 1/1/22. They were actually established on February 11th, 2022 after that date. And their application was actually submitted on 5/24. This is a different site plan. It's a different site plan. It was submitted by Fine Federal, not by Coastal Health, which was the original submission in 2018. It's a different application. It's a different site plan based on the application use of a medical versus an adult use. It's a different site plan and application based on the size of the facility that was going to be used for this, 2,600 square feet versus 4,000 square feet. There's a different parking lot. It's a completely different site plan. It had 17 spots compared to the 27 spots that they're proposing now. It's a completely different site plan from the previous site plan. It's undisputed this is a new site plan application, which is contrary to the actual zoning regulations that they had to have site plan approval prior to January 1st, 2022. So in conclusion, the zoning board really must deny this application based on the multiple undisputed reasons I just put forth. There are several others in our legal brief. So respectfully submitted, Mark McCarthy. Any questions?
Thank you for your focus on zoning. Anyone else online? We've got Jacqueline, is it?
We also
Mr.
have-
Chairman,
Jacqueline,
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a comment.
Who's speaking?
Carl Fortuna, First Selectman, if I
Okay,
may.
yes, go ahead.
Just very briefly, Mr. McCarthy was quite eloquent in his comments. This is a bad location for this business. And I feel like that this business has come in and they've been a little bit arrogant about their ability to site their store at this location. I received an email at one point from a gentleman, and I couldn't find the email on my phone, but in essence, he basically told me it's not a question of if, it's a question of when were coming in, which I didn't appreciate at all. And this is probably 3 months ago, before this hearing, and I can happy to share that if this hearing gets continued. But this is a bad location. It's a bad traffic location. There are many other areas in town where, and my comments are not at all to be interpreted by this commission or anybody else in town as being pro or anti medical, or for that matter, recreational marijuana at all. It's here and it's legal in the state of Connecticut, and I anticipate that there are going to be locations for to dispense it either in Old Saybrook or around Old Saybrook in the very near future. But they're coming into a location and trying to put a square peg in a round hole. And that seems to be what they're doing. And I'd like this commission, I think, is in a difficult spot because a lot of the application may meet the zoning regs. Obviously, not all of it. And the chairman has made some very good recommendations tonight. Mr. McCarthy, I think, has made some points. So there's probably reasons to deny it. But I'd like to see Fine Fettle regroup and perhaps take a different tack. They're coming in, I think, with the wrong attitude, and they're rubbing people the wrong way, especially just members of the public, certainly me. And I think they should perhaps take a different tack and find a more suitable location, a more suitable retail location, and apply for a commercial license there. So I just wanted to make my comments. I wanted them to be on the record that I'm opposed to this dispensary in this location. It's bad for many of the reasons that were mentioned tonight by the zoning commission, by Mr. McCarthy, and by the chief of police. I'm sure if he's able to comment. So that's it. I just wanted to say my piece. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Fortune. All right. So, anyone else?
Jacqueline?
Okay, Joanne, who do we have?
Jacqueline,
Jacqueline, we have,
can you hear us?
Jacqueline, can you hear us? Jacqueline, if you were not you were not heard if you were speaking earlier. We were listening to First Selectman, and if you wish to say something now's your time, Jacqueline.
Your mic isn't on.
Her mic is
I don't think
No.
the speakers are on either.
Yeah.
I don't think she can hear you.
She spurs.
No,
Jacqueline is connecting to us.
technical difficulties.
Um,
All right, Chief Spira, he's got his hand up.
We also have someone else here, this caller.
Oh, okay, we got a,
Caller, can you identify yourself?
Mr. Chairman, I think I'm finally here. Can you hear me?
yes,
Yeah.
we can hear
Who's
you.
speaking?
Chief Spira.
I'll let Jacqueline go first, and then I'll just stand by.
We can't get her audio.
Jacqueline's audio is not coming through. Sorry. So Chief Spira, go ahead.
Great, thank you very much, and I certainly want to thank Mr. McCarthy and our first selectman for his comments. I did not have an opportunity to do a regulatory review on the draft operational conditions, so I have just a couple of questions, points of clarification. First of all, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for noting that the off-site parking is something that is against the zoning regulations, but more importantly, we certainly do not want, as you eloquently put, pedestrians crossing Route 1 at that very busy intersection. So thank you very much. That would be tremendously unsafe. But looking through the operational conditions, the draft one, am I to understand that Fine Fettle is only going to do online sales, meaning that no one will be permitted to walk in and shop?
That's what they have presented to us. That's how they would conduct their business.
That's correct.
Okay. Find that interesting. And then, looks like they've reduced it to just 8 appointments per 10-minute period. And Mr. Chairman, you were doing some math before. I wanted to carry that out one more step. I believe that would be 528 customers a day.
48 an hour from, we got 9 to 8, the hours of operation. We got 11. 9 to 8 is 11. 11 times 48. 528. Yes, 528.
Yeah, so again, I just want to, and you eloquently put before, you know, the traffic engineers do their studying, and then it's up to local legal traffic authority and public safety to really do the monitoring. And so again, I would just like to submit that that parking lot, that site, cannot properly accommodate 528 customers a day plus staff. I also agree with Mr. McCarthy that the 10-minute time frame of coming in, parking, having a point of sale experience, getting back in their car, and then leaving the lot before the next appointment, all within 10 minutes, does not seem possible for every one of those 528 customers each day. So again, I just want to submit that the application for this specific site just simply does not work. And I'll echo my comments to be consistent that if we chose to approve this specific site for this specific use, it would be negligent to do so. If this was not a marijuana dispensary and it was another store going in that location that had a customer count of 528 customers a day, I would be saying the same exact thing to this elite commission, that just does not work for that parking lot, for that site in that area of town. So I would respectfully request that the zoning commission tonight, when they choose to close the public hearing, vote to deny the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Spiro. Anyone else in the room wishing to speak in favor of or in opposition to?
Christopher Cicero, owner Ocean Performance. I don't want to beat a dead horse. I stood up here a month ago. My concerns are for my property, my property. To reiterate what Chief Spiro said, I find that having 20 employees for 27 parking places, I think it would be foolish to think that there's not going to be overflow, driving around in circles, killing time and impacting my business. And I think that's my biggest concern. You know, we run a lot of equipment in and out of the place, and we use our place actively, and our parking places are used. And I can't see the overflow, not just picking my front lawn directly. You all know where I am. I'm directly across the street. It's going to be the natural place to just pull in and kill time, like a cell phone lot. And it concerns me that I'm going to be in confrontational situations all day, trying to keep people out of my private parking lot and off my lawn. So again, it's pretty much the same thing I said last month, but I appreciate the opportunity to speak my mind again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone online use the raise your hand feature? None appearing. Right. Back in the room, anyone wishing to speak? Yes, in the back.
I just wanted, I didn't come here not to stand up and at least say that I
Can you-
oppose this.
Excuse me, can you just tell me who you are?
Lisa,
Last name?
GABELMANN.
Okay, thank you.
I think Mr. McCarthy has done beyond due diligence. He was incredibly articulate, and I thank him for that. Mr. Fortuna and Chief Spira, I agree with the comments that they said, and so I won't go on about it, except to say that I agree with the three of them. And, you know, then we have a local business that, 2 local businesses that are going to be impacted. And we have a small town, we're always saying buy local. So I just thank you for the opportunity, but I wanted to, but you know, I could go on about why, but I won't. But I am opposed.
Anyone else? Online, I see no hands raised, and anyone else in the room wishing to speak in favor of or in opposition to? So where are we now? Any commissioners, any questions, comments based on new stuff?
We have somebody,
There's
like Rafferty, just raised his hand.
You just
He's letting go.
let it
no,
go.
yes, no, I don't see any.
No, he put his hand.
Let me know if
Good
it
down.
changes. All right, so we have, Attorney Willis, at this point, we have an option to close the public hearing because we have received referrals and input from traffic authorities from one that we contacted from the applicant. We have received modifications from the applicant that we've considered. We've received input from the public, local traffic authority, and with the draft operational condition and the time constraint, as you suggested, factored out such that the operation, and I prefer to get rid of item D entirely, just because I find that was confusing, and if you take out the time factor, item D on the operation condition is unnecessary. Right, so the other parts, except for the definition of the initial period, you don't need an initial period.
So I guess your question is whether we should close the public hearing
Yes,
or continue it.
right,
that's
so
up to the
well, at
commission.
this
If you
point, I
wanted
don't
to
see the
continuation,
need,
you'd have to ask the-
I don't see the need to continue, do we need to continue the public hearing for additional input from the applicant?
No, I would like to make some concluding comments, but otherwise I don't have any need to continue the public hearing. I'm happy to
No
wrap
additional
up and,
submission,
and close.
right? At this point, then, go ahead.
Any other questions for me or anybody on the applicant's team before? I didn't know if there was anything else, but depending on what I say, but, so I think the first thing I wanted to do was just respond to a couple of the comments that were raised in both by First Selectman Fortuna, by the police chief and Mr. McCarthy. First of all, with respect to the definition and whether we're eligible to apply. Clearly, I think that is a determination you've made by processing the application, having heard, having looked at everything, the argument about the fact that the site plan or somehow fine fettle was not created. You're all familiar with zoning law and understand that the site plan and the special exception that were issued run with the land. They're not specific to the applicant. And so what you envisioned in your regulations is exactly what would happen. And what has happened could happen on the other side of town. There were 2 locations that could be approved, modified as we've come before you tonight. So I think that initial question of whether we're even eligible to apply is frankly incorrect based on just basic zoning principles. And then I think the question and some of the comments about the traffic and operations. I think of what I want to emphasize to you is that there is no expectation on the part of Fine Fettle that we are going to have anywhere near 500 customers a day. That is what we've outlined is how many appointments might be available. So as I think you probably remember from the first night of the public hearing, for example, we might have an available appointment. We might have all 8 spots available on a Tuesday morning, but that doesn't mean we're going to have customers actually take those spots. We expect that, you know, as frankly, the numbers that we're projecting are are a mere percentage of what is being speculated by members of the commission. And I think consistent with what you've heard from Mr. Del Rio in reviewing parking expectations and traffic generation, what they see, what frankly ITE sees in its locations, there is a sense and an expectation and understanding in the country about how these facilities operate, how many trips they generate, and all that data is consistent with what you saw in that report. I think with respect to First Selectman Fortuna, I unfortunately think maybe there was some miscommunication. As we noted at the last hearing, Ben Zacks, during his initial presentation, there were some questions about whether we'd ever get a license. And that there was a lottery, I think it was Chief Sparrow that raised the question. And what was conveyed to the first selectman was in fact the same thing that we conveyed to the chief during this meeting, and to you, which was that because of the process by which Fine Federal applied for its license, it was not a question of winning the lottery or anything else. It was truly a question of when they would be approved for this type of license, not a question of if, because of the way the legislation is written. And we did include in the record, we submitted to Chris Costa a copy of the provisional license. The last hearing, remember I mentioned that we did get that. So if there was a miscommunication, we certainly apologize. I think, as you saw from Mr. Zacks from earlier presentations, and I hope for myself, we've tried to really be forthcoming with this commission about any questions you might have, consistent with that representation about the number of customers we expect or the data Mr. Zacks said to you tonight, and we could make it available if it was something that you thought was important. All the data about transactions is available. It's consistent with what we're showing as far as the number of parking spaces, customers, and in our experience in other locations. So if that was something you wanted us to provide, on a monthly basis to the staff, please provide us the transactional data from the month prior. As he said, that's something that's already available, and we'd certainly be willing to make it available to you. And then I think the last point with respect to the co-location or excuse me, proximity with the daycare, certainly that's something you were aware of when you exercised your legislative discretion in making determinations about where the uses would be allowed in the town, and what would be appropriate. I think some of these questions that were raised about somehow people wouldn't choose to operate a facility. I don't know about you, I thought about who was caring for my children when I picked a daycare, not where that facility was located. In fact, occasionally picked an inconvenient location because I thought that was more important. And I don't think that most parents are making the decision based upon, frankly, there's an industrial use next door. But I think that's less of a consideration. And I do think that, the analogy that I had brought up equally to liquor stores and those kinds of uses, those are allowed in the B4 as of right. They're retail uses. And so some of these things, if we wanted to put a liquor store here, that would be allowed, and it would be in close proximity to the daycare or frankly in other locations on the post road. So I do think that the difference here, as I noted last time, this is a much more highly regulated use than the alcohol business, frankly, tobacco even, that you could buy in a convenience store. So I think the nature of this use is truly intended to be adult focused, limitations on its operations. And I think the concluding thought is we really have tried to be, as I said, forthcoming and address a number of the issues that we heard from you, and to relay some of these or allay some of the concerns that you may have had about how the facility would operate and impact on neighboring property owners. And I think what we've done in the condition and what we've articulated to you, I think we've really tried to do the best job we can to make sure that we're a good neighbor and there are no adverse impacts to the surrounding property owners. So with that, I have nothing further. If you have any other questions for us, but otherwise, thank you very much.
At this point, we have the opportunity, let's say, to close the public hearing, after which we receive no additional input from anyone other than our staff. And based on the public record established so far, that's all the material we would use to deliberate and make a determination on this application. So during the public hearing, then I'll ask Attorney Willis to prepare for us a motion on each side of the issue. Could you please prepare a motion to approve and a motion to deny for the commission to consider as part of their deliberations?
Yes.
The concern is that we make a decision that's defensible should it be appealed. If it were denied. If it could be appealed if it were approved as well, and if it were to be appealed, would our decision be legally defensible? The quandary I have is with regard to the situation that was caused by the state. We previously approved 2 marijuana dispensary medical uses. And subsequent to that, the state changed the rules. And we've limited the possibility for marijuana dispensary recreational or adult use to those 2 locations. If we deny one, it leaves only one. If we approve one, as Mr. Fortuna said, it's not a question of if, but a question of when. If we got another application, because the state changed the rules regarding the limit based on population, we may have to entertain a second one. So I'm looking to the situation, let's just look at one situation. If we were to deny one, that would leave us with only one site. But a denial is just a denial of a special exception in one flavor. It still allows for subsequent approvals at that same location, right?
Right. I mean, every application is considered on its own merits.
Right. So a denial of one does not leave us by default with only one possibility. That's what I'm getting.
That's true.
The other location, right?
At this point in time, that's true.
That's true. So I didn't want to read too much into a possible denial in terms of what that.
Either way, approval or denial is based on the application at this point in time.
Okay, so at this point, just before closing public hearing, we would direct our attorney to draft a motion to approve and a motion to deny, either one of which the commission would adopt and to act on this application.
Right.
All right, I'll make a motion to close public hearing regarding the Fine Federal Dispensary, the application for special exception use for a 4,000 square foot adult use marijuana dispensary at 233 Boston Post Road, Assessor's Map 44, Lot 11, in the Gateway Business B4 District. Close public hearing. Is there a second? Jerry Lewis seconds the motion to close the public hearing on this matter. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion to close public hearing, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously, no abstentions, and none opposed. Thank you. And Attorney Willis, your staff, we got to communicate with you, but we don't take in any additional input. Thank you for your participation, and thank you for your input. That's part of our public record that goes into our thinking. Next on the agenda is a petition to amend the Old Saybrook zoning regulation, section 64 and 11 sign regulations. This was a petition, the petitioner of the Old Saybrook Architectural Review Board. And my agenda says that they're requesting to continue to October 17th, 2022 at the request of the applicant.
Why aren't we
Wait.
voting tonight on this?
He wants me to do a motion to approve and a motion to deny his draft to submit to you.
For next meeting? Is that
For the
what it
next
is?
meeting?
Yes,
Yeah, it won't be tonight.
we have a deliberation period.
No, come on.
The public hearing is closed. That time period is
Got
finished.
that.
The deliberation period is how many days?
65 days.
65 days to make a determination.
Plenty of time. Now, I got a note from Chris on this item, the new item we're discussing. Petition to amend the old Saybrook regulations, section 64 and 11 sign regulations. That the Architectural Review Board has requested the matter be continued to 10/17 meeting.
Yeah. Go.
Oh, you got to say
Yeah, we
no.
got, yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing here. I thought I was helping out.
He's reading everything, so that's
I
why.
didn't do the whole-
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I know it gets boring, but bear with. I would make a motion to continue the application to amend the Old Saybrook zoning regulation section 64 and 11 sign regulations that where the petitioner is the Old Saybrook Architectural Review Board to the zoning commission meeting of October 17th, 2022, at 7 p.m. in Town Hall, first floor conference room at 302 Main Street.
Second,
Seconded by Jerry Lewis. Any discussion? All in favor?
She went to the restroom.
Justin, you're seated for.
Aye.
For him. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Continue to 10:17. Next item, public hearings. Petition to amend the Old Saybrook zoning regulation to incorporate recent standards of Connecticut River Gateway Conservation Commission for CGS 25-102G and other amendments. Petitioner, the Old Saybrook zoning commission, which means we don't have a deadline.
good.
So did you, everybody get the comments from the Gateway Commission regarding the items of concern from our Old Saybrook zoning commission perspective? All right, the Gateway Commission appreciated or commended Old Saybrook for proposing the stricter standard with regard to the general regulation that wherein property owners sever the gateway part and go on from there. So it appears that Gateway would be on board with our version of that regulation, text change. Then with regard to the building instructor coverage, where the Gateway would limit 15% coverage for the lot area of every lot that's in the Gateway district, even if it's not visible from the river. Gateway Commission has developed standards in the past that have addressed this kind of variation on the local flavor and is committed to finding an acceptable standard that will provide flexibility desired by the Old Saybrook Zoning Commission and would be applicable and effective in all other Gateway member towns. So the Gateway Commission is committing to quickly developing such a flexible standard for lot coverage where the 15% limit might be onerous. And request the zoning commission hold off adopting the proposed language of draft section 58.8 building structure coverage in the Gateway Conservation Zone to allow time for the Gateway Commission to develop that standard. So that with the Gateway behind our application for this text change, the Gateway Commission is asking for additional time to address our concerns to modify the proposed text change. And in that sense, then we can continue, postpone this matter to a future meeting, because we as the petitioner are not under time constraints. So at this point, I will make a motion to continue this matter to our October 17th meeting with the understanding that it doesn't have to be concluded in evening. If
Okay.
you get backed up or too busy or whatever. But if we have the opportunity to do it, we can do it then. I will make a motion to continue the public petition to amend the Old Saybrook zoning regs to incorporate recent standards, Connecticut River Gateway Commission, and other amendments to our next regularly scheduled hybrid meeting of Monday, October 17th, 2022 at 7 p.m. in Town Hall, first floor conference room 302 Main Street.
Second.
Seconded by Jerry Lewis. All in favor, any discussion, all in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries 5-0. Sandy's voting on this one. Justin's back to halting. Next on the agenda is a workshop to discuss section
Put my place
50.
again.
To discuss section 53, drive-through windows as an accessory use for financial institutions, pharmacies, indoor restaurants, or other food and beverage establishments. It has come to our attention, Chris Casa and me, and perhaps others as well, that our recently adopted regulation allowing for additional drive-through window opportunities presents unintended consequences in the form of multiple drive-throughs on adjacent lots and having to deal with applications for special exception, especially indoor restaurant with drive-through windows on multiple lots in a certain part or any part where they're allowed. And I don't think it was conceived, not by me, that we would end up with a food court of drive-through restaurants consolidated in a short distance. And at this point, it was a possible idea to put a moratorium on such drive-through window applications until we can sort this matter out. And what do you think?
I agree.
Yeah,
Mark? Yes? Justin?
Why not?
You're in this part, you're in. Yeah.
You're in.
Yeah.
As long as we limit it for some time, how long?
We have, a moratorium is limited, so a moratorium of 6 months is practical.
That's a normal lasting
Okay.
moratorium.
6 months, 6 months out from October 3rd is 10th month, we got 4 months, April, sometime in April.
That's fine.
Okay, and I will note, how do we, the commission had reached a consensus that a moratorium
Could be considered.
drive-through windows is in order, so
be considered, yes.
Yeah, you have to consider. It's a legislative act.
do we need a resolution or a moratorium motion wording?
What would the wording be?
The wording will be something that's be presented to the commission by staff.
Okay,
Okay, I mean, we get the drift, so
Okay.
All right.
you'll be given something that would
so the
be a
the
moratorium.
window for applications is still open until such time as the moratorium is adopted
Yes,
It's adopted and it's effective.
and effective date thereafter, right?
Yeah. That
And
is
so,
correct.
do we need specific wording regarding a moratorium and a motion today within a potential?
Well, no, because it has to be a public hearing.
yeah,
Oh, that's right, you're right, okay.
Yeah.
So there has to be a public
All right.
hearing.
So at this point, we ask our attorney for wording to properly adopt a moratorium of 6 month time period regarding drive-through windows. Impact after our recent text change, right? We direct our clerk to put a public hearing on our agenda as soon as possible in order for that to take place then. Okay, thank you. Committee representative and staff reports, anything? Wetlands, anybody? No, that's John Henry, or who's doing? Wetlands, anything?
We just have the review coming up of the Oasis. They withdrew their initial application, resubmitted the same application. We're waiting for further details in order to review that, but there's concern over wetland encroachment.
Right. Anything else?
no, it's 10 o'clock.
Yes, I know, we got there. Thank you for your patience, we did get through. Motion to adjourn,
Motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion.
I'll
Thursday,
second,
second
yeah.
motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously, thank you, and good night, thank you.
Thank you and
Thank
good
you.
night.
I have